Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle and triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. Welcome those that are already jumping on to listen to Miss Candace's story. The Her Version podcast is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I have Miss Candace Sheppard on here with us to share her story on how she was able to slowly grow her voice and her confidence. She no longer apologizes for her power. She is the founder of Confidence That Converts and is here to help you destroy limiting beliefs that are hindering your future so you can create a powerful one. Welcome, lady.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here sharing with everyone.
Yes, girl. Well, listen, I was just on your podcast yesterday.
Yes.
So, not trying to like low key compete, but we're building empires over here.
Yes.
So
indeed we are.
Appreciate you taking some time out of your day to sit down with me and share your journey and your story and nuggets of inspiration that you can share with the Her Version community over here. Mm-hmm. How's your Wednesday treating you?
It's treating me real smooth and real fine. Like I said, the dog is not trying to tear everything down, and neither is the child. So it's a win over here.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, listen, I would love to just kind of jump in. I would love to hear a little bit about your past, a little bit about your journey. The Her Version podcast is all about storytelling. So I would love to just kind of give you the floor and kind of give us some bullet points on who you are, a little bit about your past, and then we'll kind of flow in. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And so with respect to my background, right, let's just, the best way I can describe it is like a loving family in the middle of Beirut. Okay, right? Like that's the kind of chaos that I come from. And so the environment that I came up in very specific instances, was where I was hit with a lot of venom and a lot of wisdom all at the same time. Oh. And so, yeah, I grew up the oldest of 3 kids, power to all the oldest children who know they went through the struggle the most. And so I also grew up in a household that was filled with men. I was the only girl out of about 18 grandchildren. And so, yeah, we grew up.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, a lot of testosterone at all times, in all ways, places, and spaces. And so what was interesting was that, again, the environment that I came up in was filled with so much duality. It was very difficult to uncover who I was, right? And who I wanted to be in the world. Eventually, I made my way. But what was interesting was all these men in so many ways wanted to physically protect me, but did not know how to do that emotionally. Right. And so as I came up, I was a very quiet child. We are some loud, crazy personalities in my family. And people can see where I get all that boisterousness from now. It took years to get there, but my mom used to always tell me I was not the type of child who was one to talk until I was about 5 years old. And apparently I'm making up for all the talking I didn't do since then, right? Since birth.
I love it.
So, right, it was the kind of household where, a lot of ambition and drive was welcome, but not emotion. And so I grew up without realizing that in so many ways I had numbed myself And my way of getting by was all about doing the right thing at the right time in the right order. That was the way I derived my value. And the value also came from not pushing back on everyone else and what they told me they wanted to do. So I also didn't grow up in a very religious household. Okay, we were sinners. Okay, there was drugs, there was alcohol, there was all the things. Men always coming into the house. A lot of, again, love mixed with instability. And so I took that with me through to my high school years. And it was right around that time that I started to question everything. I was like, I'm working like a dog. No one in this family is happy. I'm doing what it is that they've told me to do. And as I started to come more into my own and push back on some of these boundaries, I realized that my value wasn't found in the things I was doing. It was also not found in the way they perceived me, because the moment I wasn't doing what they wanted me to do, I wasn't valuable anymore. And so I got to the point where I was like, to hell with all of this and to hell with all of y'all. And I'm going to do whatever it is that I want to do now. And so from about 17 years old to 19, I just went on this crazed path of, again, do what I want to do, not going to school anymore, not going to be the straight A student, not going to take what everyone else is that, whatever it is they want me to do. I'm not going to take anyone's crap. And what happened was I ended up in a relationship with a boyfriend who very much reflected that chaotic environment. 1 minute there, the next minute not, or physically present, emotionally not. And that was a roller coaster that I recommend no one get on at any amusement park. Okay.
Thank you.
But what was interesting was by the time we had finished, trying to tear each other's lives apart from not getting what we needed, and again, coming together from the chaos that was modeled in our own homes, I was devastated. At that point, I had been kicked out of my mother's home after getting into a physical fight with her, much of which came from the sibling rivalry that she fostered between me and my brothers. Those of us who are the girls who grew up in Caribbean, Latino, Black households, if you know, it is very much an environment where a man is celebrated even in his mediocrity.
Yes.
And the woman has to do everything. She's got to be everything. She's got to have everything. And so the one particular fight I had gotten into with my brother was very much the black sheep of the family, like my mom was. So she was much more partial to him. Long story short, this particular fight I had with him, even though I was innocent, this is the kind of craziness that put me in the position of questioning why I was listening and doing what everyone wanted me to do all the time. Okay. Because I would do right and I would still be blamed for things I hadn't done wrong.
Wow.
Right. So as I'm, coming up and trying to qualify my identity, this particular fight ensued, and over ice cream. For those of you who are foodies and understand the importance of food, okay, you are willing to go to war over the things you want to eat and the ice cream and foods you buy for yourself. And so this day was no different. What I didn't anticipate was it would be the thing that my mom kicked me out over the house over, which is what spurred that fight, that physical fight I had with her. And so long story short, that physical fight was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. And I was like, I am never staying in my mother's house again. If you are visionary like myself, you tend to have a lot of conflict with your parents because your parents tend to bring you up believing that the best way to go is theirs. They don't understand their positioning in your life as a guide, as someone to walk you through your decision making and help you uncover more of your own image and identity. And so this is what ensued with my mom. The ice cream went flying. I got kicked out, and I was on my own with this boyfriend. Now I had moved up to him, moved up to Boston with him randomly. And while we were there, we had gotten into a horrible fight. And I left there, and here I was, 19 years old, not knowing who I was, what I wanted, not having the family and the support it was that I needed. No mom or dad to talk to. Dad was a Rolling Stone. Okay, wherever he laid his hat was his home, right?
Okay.
So he wasn't around either. And that was the point in life where I was like, I need to get acquainted with my image and my identity, with what I want for life.
Wow, you were
And
thinking that at 19?
yeah, I know.
Good for
I was an
you.
enigma. I was
Oh
very
my
much a
gosh.
strange bird. Yes, I've always been a thinker. I've always been, but that's the mark of a visionary, right? We are deeply attached to growth. We love contribution. We want to see things move forward. And that was that part of me was in such conflict with what my family was modeling.
Yeah.
Right. And so while it wasn't religion for them, the religion was do as I say, not as we do. And
Wow.
because I wouldn't ascribe to that, I became the black sheep. And then I realized black sheep are typically the ones who recognize what's happening, are there, in my belief, are there the type of people that God placed there with the purpose of disrupting things to create the healthy change the family needs. Girl,
I'll
you
take
get
that.
exactly where I'm coming from.
I'll
Okay.
take it.
Yes, yes. And it's because we see things clearly, right? We're recognizing that there's no connection here. There's no purpose for us to be moving forward like this. And so we end up becoming the black sheep if we aren't born the black sheep to begin with. And so I had started to embrace this as my identity. I took on a job, interestingly enough, when I broke up with this boyfriend. I took on a job that was waiting for me before I moved to Boston. And so I came back and I'm devastated. I moved in with my grandmother and right back into just another layer of chaos, right? Moved back in with her and then took this job. And while I was on this job, I met a friend who began to introduce me to personal development. Her name was Janice, and I credit her with being one of the people in this world that actually saved my life. And so she began to talk to me about relationships and even her relationship with God. And it didn't sound like any of this foolishness that I had been listening to from some religious zealots I had come across. I was like, you are crazy and you are talking about stuff and that is not God. I knew what God was and what he wasn't. And so the more she began to talk to me, the more I began to recognize that I did have a purpose, and it was to disrupt and it was to do all of these things. And so fast forward about a year and a half later, I had decided that I wanted to be a Christian, not by these standard terms, not with this religious rhetoric of you have to do this and that. I was purely after relationship. And the more I began to understand God's order and the way he moved things, the more I began to understand the purpose for all of the chaos that I had been going through. Interestingly enough, the chaos was not finished. It was not done with me because I hadn't unlearned these crazy patterns from family, right? And that duality, 1 minute venom, 1 minute wisdom. Sure enough, I meet my husband. And I'm thinking, this is Prince Charming, baby. He has come to save the day. You know, the rhetoric that we get like pushed on with the patriarchy and all the craziness. And so he represented so much of what I lacked. He was the 20% that I was missing out of the 80. Wow. And I did not recognize that my husband had a knack for presenting a particular image. So I didn't have the tools to discern who was real and who wasn't, because I was getting the back and forth in my family. And lo and behold, we got married about a year after dating and, unexpectedly had a little munchkin, right? And so in that whole process, when you're going through the transitions of life, the parts of your identity that don't belong to you start to fall off. You start recognizing this is out of sync with my values. This is not what I wanted, right?
Wow.
And as I started to unpack all of these things, my husband began to grow in his resentment because he didn't want to grow. He didn't want to do those things. And I ended up finding out that he had a great deal in common with my mother, who is a covert narcissist. And so over time, I began to unpack, again, all the things I had used to qualify my image, all the things I had used to qualify my identity. And the more I began to separate the chaos of what others wanted to project on me and get that diamond sharp clarity on what I wanted and who I was and who I believed God made me to be, the happier I became.
Yes.
But the more conflict it created in my marriage.
Yeah.
So now I've got a choice. Am I going to continue to keep on with this chaos or not? Anytime I wanted to start a business, he had something negative to do or say. Anytime I wanted to expand, it was chaos coming from him or even the friends. And I use that term loosely, right? The friends I had allowed in my life. And what was beautiful about it, if we were to wrap all of this up, was that I walked away with a thorough understanding of, again, who I was, what I wanted, the type of environment I wanted to be in. And I separated from my husband, finally, after years, restarted my life, launched Confidence That Converts, which I had been working on prior to the separation. And all of these things put everything in life into such a wash and rinse cycle that everything that came out of it was clean. And I was like, this I can wear. This is a part of my image. This is a part of my identity. And as I went through that growth period, there was health issues, hospital visits, all types of manipulation, neglect, emotional abuse. And the more it happened, the more I began to learn more about who I was and what I wanted and what I was not going to tolerate. Yesterday, you and I talked about briefly what happens in someone's mind when they want to leave. People are quick to say, well, why didn't you leave?
Yeah.
In my case, it was that I was not aware that that was abuse.
Yeah.
I was so used to it.
Yeah.
And it took someone to say that, to go, that kind of clarity was instantly the thing I needed to hear, to go, oh, that's what this is.
Yeah.
I was so used to it at home. I had no idea this is what was going on. This was the norm.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so once I recognized that, I was able to do something about it. And that's when I began to tap back into my power. That power comes from three things I'm always talking about: sharp clarity, diamond sharp clarity. It comes from congruence, right? Are these people a part of the experience I want to create from my life? Do they reflect these things or not? Right? Am I living out the values that make me feel the most like me? Right? And that clarity and congruence is what gives you the courage you were talking about, right? The courage to take action you normally wouldn't take. That is what spurred me on to leave my husband, to turn everything around, to start healing my body. And it turns out that each one of those experiences, while I do not believe God wants us to go through hardship to learn, it was one of the things he brought good out of, right? That's the empowering part of our story too. Like, our strengths are built as we go through different aspects of our stories. It sharpens our skills with people. And that is what catapults you into a place of confidence, where you can say, oh, this is a hell no. And that is a hell yes, because it's all me.
Yeah.
And so the even more interesting part of the story is that after that period, it was about 5 or 6 years after all of this happened, that my husband watched my transformation and it woke him up. And I had shared this with you prior, but of course, everyone listening hasn't heard it yet. My husband's counselor, he went to therapy over it. And I had been asking him for years prior to do that.
Yeah.
And so it took me separating him and asking him to leave our home, all of these things. And I was like, bro, I don't want to hear a thing you have to say anymore. Your story, you need to get better at writing it, sir. Okay. And sure enough, his counselor calls me and she's like, I've been working with him for months. And I'm like this, like, okay, sis, just, continue telling the lies. If he wants to tell you a Hail Mary, let him do that. But I'm not believing it until I see some things walked out. Yeah. So that first time she invited me into a session with him and I said, oh no. See, it's so powerful to be in a place of saying hell yes or hell no.
Yeah.
Right? If your no doesn't mean anything, your yes won't either.
Yeah.
So getting there was the thing that she was like, oh, she is serious about not making room for not making any room or space for this man in her life anymore. She was so persistent. She called me again. She said, I've got some things, some stories I want to share with you. And I want you to come into a session to listen to what your husband has learned and what he has to say. And that was the thing.
Wow.
That I went into the session, okay, with, the skeptic's brow. Okay, sir, let's
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
And sure enough, she was telling the unmitigated truth. And he began to unpack all of the trauma and the
Wow.
chaos in his life. And so that mirroring, again, all the experiences I went through with him, losing my health over losing myself, right?
Yeah.
All the things that had happened, childhood till present day, became the powerful parts of my story because they propelled me even deeper into the work that I do now as a coach and a business owner. And so that is what manifested into Confidence That Converts, where I am so enamored with people and their possibilities and their highest capability that my work revolves around that brilliant bond they have between their strengths and their skills and their story. And they're not chasing the strengths and the skills as I used to do when I was first building my business and leaving themselves out of it.
Yeah.
Which is why when I came across Miss Sabrina Victoria, I was like, oh, ma'am, you understand the power of story. Let's have a conversation,
Yes.
There's so much that we miss in it. And a lot of us don't have the confidence we need to take the actions we want to courageously because we're still apologizing for
Yeah.
our story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A lot of what you're saying, goes back to, I understand now. I understand now looking back, I learned lessons now.
Mm-hmm.
How far away from our struggles do you think you have to be in order to actually understand the lessons that our struggles taught us? Do you think we can learn them while we're in the middle of them, or do you think there has to be some distance?
It depends on the person. And I'll say this much, it depends on the person, particularly because it's all about their self-awareness.
Yeah.
Right. I tell my students this, that, there's all of these A's you have to hit in the process of trying to get to transformation, right? Awareness makes you clear that something is stirred up, but it's different when you're practicing acknowledgement. That's also very different from when you're practicing acceptance. And then there's actual application to create that type of change. So you can have an event that happens to you that there's a lot of distance between then and now, and still not be in a place of awareness or acceptance or acknowledgement or any of that. So again, in my understanding throughout my experiences, all the things that I've done with coaching, it absolutely depends on where that person is in the dig.
Yeah.
I tell my students this just the same, that closure requires a reckoning, right? And by reckoning, you have to recognize not just what happened to you, but how in so many ways you participated in it so that you catch the patterns. And now as new situations come up that mimic what happened, you can interrupt the pattern and make a different choice to create a different outcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When individuals who are in their darkness or in their struggle right now, it's really easy to get on right now, as we have people listening right now and be like, oh, cool, cool story.
Right.
But her story's different than my story.
Mm-hmm.
Her story isn't as bad as my story. She doesn't have exactly what I had. Can you share with us, to give an example,
Mm-hmm.
of an experience, a failure, a struggle, a specific one that you specifically went through, and how you're looking at it now, what you learned from that experience, to give people an actual idea of how this works?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I want to clarify when it comes to pain is that pain is something that is qualified by one person's threshold, right? A lot of times we're looking for different ways to compare and contrast, but perhaps the pain you went through would have been the thing that absolutely crippled me, right?
Yeah.
Or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the way we came up, how our environment groomed us and what have you. So I want to clarify that helps keep us from looking for a reason to disqualify what someone is saying to us.
Yes.
At the core.
I love that.
Now, with biggest failures, the first one that comes to mind is my marriage, right? Which I shared about previously. And the reason why it was the biggest failure, which is the second part of what I want to spotlight about comparing pain, I shared a summary of my pain. I have not even gone into the deep depths of all the things that I've gone through. And so the biggest thing for me, outside of the pain of failing in my marriage, I use that term loosely, right? Because I believe failure is feedback. I don't believe it's something that keeps us from going forward, right?
100.
Right. Was that I lost my health in the middle of the battle with my husband.
Yeah.
Okay. So the pain that came from that was I went into it with my eyes completely open, my arms completely open. I was ready for whatever it was going to bring. And the frustration, or the thing that for a long time I used to shame and blame myself over getting into the relationship to begin with, was that I didn't recognize that that was not the consciousness he was in the relationship.
Wow.
Okay. So there was that pain. Then there was the pain of I'm trapped, so to speak. Okay. We're not trapped. Right? Like, God does not ask us to stay in these relationships that absolutely deteriorate, ruin, destroy what he created to be a blessing to us. This is my belief. Right. And so that processing, that mentality of dealing with all of the compound failures from that. I chose wrong, even though I did everything right, right? We were celibate before we got married. We did not have children. This is according to society, right? That there's a better way to do this. Like, please, okay, please. And if we're going to have a real conversation, like, any people who are doing it right from the start are still getting it wrong. Let's just put that on out there, right? Let's just equalize everything. So there was that. I had all of that in my head. That was the conditioning that everything was going to work out and be perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was
I know people with this story.
Listen.
Yeah.
Okay. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so this is part of my purpose. I believe I've been called to call this foolishness out, especially when it comes to religion and things of these, like, just stop. So, we got married. We did everything right. And things were still horribly wrong. And I missed so many red flags. Okay. And I didn't go into the relationship looking to qualify if this man had character. He had everything else on paper. He was a professional producer. He worked a radio show. Everyone in the community knew him as the good guy. So there were so many things I went into openly believing, and I didn't have the diamond sharp clarity. I didn't have the capacity to look at his character and weigh some things. So that felt like a failure. Then when the marriage started to deteriorate, that was the second part. I wasn't connecting that I came into the relationship thinking he was going to save me. How? like we do this because we're conditioned to believe this way, right? This relationship is going to be the thing that makes me complete. No, I make me complete on my own.
Yes.
Right? I'm the one that's in control of these things. Additional to then feeling trapped. And all of this got me to the point where at my worst, with my biggest, as part of my biggest failure, I lost my health. So the very thing I had depended on, being strong, being able to come and go as I wanted to, being able to do all of the things I wanted to, shifted, right? I went from the picture of health, and long flowing hair. I mean, you can see it's back, but it was to the point where I was a bald head scallywag. Okay. Hair was falling out. Okay. We can laugh now, right? It was not funny then, girl. It was a mess.
Oh
okay.
God.
Right. So I went from full head of hair, long hair down my back, to hair being stripped, falling out in patches. It got so bad I lost 40 pounds in a month. I went from being able to eat and consume anything to not being able to eat beans or rice. I had some meats I was developing allergies to. I had begun to develop allergies to metals, okay, touching
Wow.
doorknobs, right? I would eat spinach and break out in rashes inside of my mouth. Okay, like my body as I knew it was deteriorating, and it's because I had gotten into the habit of denying myself, my thoughts,
Wow.
my feelings, right? But that was the pattern set from when I was a child. Remember,
Yeah.
be seen, not heard, not felt, right? Not stewarded. And because it was all the boys around, I got very used to boys being physically present, not emotionally. So I learned to deny that part of myself as well. So that carried on into the marriage, and it just got worse. At its worst, I had dropped about 40 pounds in a month. I was down to a size 2. And in my teen years, I was no smaller than a size 6. Okay.
Wow.
So on top of not being able to consume normal foods and do the normal things I had been used to, my heart rate was out of control. I was in and out of the hospital, anxiety attacks, actual issues with my heart, to the point it was at 160 beats a minute. Okay.
Wow.
And so the whole time I'm sitting there like, what is happening? The
Yeah.
doctors don't have answers. No one is breaking down what's happening. And at some point, they were like, there's nothing else we can do for you. So now I'm sitting in the midst of all this chaos, believing I did it right, watching how everything has gone wrong. Now I have a 2-year-old running circles around me, and I can't even get myself out of bed by myself.
Wow.
Talk about failure on top of failure on top of failure. And
Wow.
so all of this happened after I started my very first business, which was event planning. So not only did that happen, but I lost the business after about 2 years of building a large name in South Florida. So again, compound pain, loss, failure. Imagine you're hearing me share this now, but no one had any idea that that's what I went through. And I haven't even begun to unpack the chaos that was my childhood. Let's just stick with
Wow.
adulthood and this particular failure.
Wow.
And so again, we don't know the depths of the experience, right? Sometimes we think we have a real idea. That person may not have the words for it, but this is why it's important to hold space for people, right?
Yeah.
This is why it's important not to compare and contrast, because we don't know exactly what they went through. But
Yeah.
maintaining empathy and compassion, and again, not comparing what we hear someone tell us, because some people aren't telling us everything. They're
Yeah.
telling us the stuff that maybe most can digest, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And allowing everyone's pain threshold to be their own, and to stop comparing on that end, but to go deep into clarifying what that is for you. What's going to come of this pain? This is what I always tell my students. Don't waste your pain. You went through that experience.
Yes.
Is something good going to come out of it?
That is my mantra right there. I love it.
And
Don't
so
waste your pain.
it's
so
huge.
Good.
It's huge. And that's the thing that spurs women like you on, that spurs women like me on to do the thing we're doing right now. To have the difficult conversations, right? To share the parts that people normally don't perceive, right? And in that, they're having a reckoning. They're getting the closure. They're recognizing, if Sabrina and Candace can do this after all they've been through, I can do this too.
Yeah.
And it's a whole dynamic transformation and change that's happening with every single step. And you're giving yourself grace for it, right?
Yeah.
You're allowing yourself to experience peace. You're allowing yourself to process the pain. And that's why distance isn't the thing that qualifies that. Neither does anything else. It's just, this is my story, and I'm going to own every part of it. And I'm going to do every single thing that I can with it. And those who want to hear it, I'm giving them the space to earn that right from me. And then those who don't, they're not going to be a part of my community at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Changes everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. Obviously, from this conversation, you are a fan of self-development and personal growth.
Mm-hmm. The thing that saved me.
what's your thought process for other people who, are kind of like, really, self-development? That's what we're doing now?
You know what? What's interesting is they're immediately coming up with so much resistance because they've gotten used to the power that comes from the anger of even having to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. But if we were to scratch the surface of anger, we don't cover grief. We don't cover the fact that they were not in environments that taught them how to cope. And so naturally, they're going to resist the idea of something coming to them that they can't associate with, that they don't understand, right? That also comes from pride, right? There's some ego and entitlement happening there. Why do I have to do all of this to get to the... Do you want the change? Do you want the transformation? Okay, then. Clearly, if without self-development, you haven't been able to get there, you're going to have to open up your mind and heart in such a way that it makes room for you to take in something different and then move forward, right? But a lot of us are terrified of our curiosity. A lot of us don't want to do the digging, right? So we're going to find ways to disqualify or resist the conversation before we even begin, right? As coaches, we know this, right? We have to navigate where a person is. We got to meet them where they are. And this also happens to visionaries, right? We are very future focused. We love growth. We love contribution. But the idea of being stuck in the present to work through something, being in the messy middle, is discouraging. And it's the thing that keeps us from going after what we see in reality in the future. Yeah. So again, that resistance to doing things differently, taking in different information means that you need to scratch behind that surface of what am I resisting? Like, why is it that I have an aversion to this? And it might be a pattern. It might be something in the family that was passed down that you're just now encountering for the first time in this way, right? Yeah. It could be a number of things, but anytime somebody is shutting down something before they've really gotten to know it, something is happening with ego and entitlement.
Yeah, 100%. So our audience is hanging tight. Our audience is here. They're staying steady. They're appreciating everything you're saying. They're getting it. They're like, okay, personal growth. Okay. But what's the steps? What am I supposed to do? I'm in the funk. I'm in the struggle. I'm in the darkness. It sucks. What's the steps? What's my first step? What's my second step? What am I supposed to do? Do you have an answer?
Oh, absolutely. I've got plenty to say, apparently, right? Right. The first thing being is you have to spend time with you. Ooh. That's what a lot of us are avoiding, right?
Wait, what does that mean?
So I liken this to dating with my students, right? Okay. A lot of times we go into the dating pool or the world of dating to get to know other people more than we will ourselves. I am intimately in touch with myself in a way that I can spend time with myself to get that diamond sharp clarity on what I want and to brutally be honest with myself and say when I'm operating in a way that it's not what I want. You can only do that when you spend time with yourself, when you're processing your thoughts, right? When you're growing through that self-awareness that I was talking about, right? So one of the ways that I began doing this is paying attention to the people who were triggering, looking for those patterns. What did I feel like when I walked into different environments? Right? What were the things that actually brought me joy? Right? So, for example, one of the experiences that I went through, my best friend in the whole entire world killed herself.
Oh my God.
And it was unexpectedly in the midst of all the chaos I was going through with my husband. And so that experience violently forced me into understanding the way I was spending time. And my apologies to those who may be triggered with such a eye-opening shock like, you know, if you've lost someone in this way, there's no pain, especially somebody you deeply love that, you know, sees you and feels you and loves you. There is no pain in the world like that.
Yeah.
Like thinking to yourself, what happened? But what that experience violently shoved me into was qualifying the relationships around me and why she was one of the only people who helped me feel this way, and looking at her characteristics, right? And then aligning them with other people around me and going, oh, you're not a friend. And how did you get in here? And then creating value systems on the back end of that. You know, earlier I talked about the power of your yes and no. Like your yes has no weight or meaning until your no does.
Yeah.
That experience helped me to qualify the type of people I was willing to say no to and the ones I was willing to say yes to, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by spending time with yourself. Really listening, paying attention to the things you'll normally go, oh, it's not that big a deal. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. If you felt it, right? And there's a part of you that's going, and well, you're out of congruence.
Wow.
But you can't know you're out of congruence if you're not spending time with yourself in this way,
Yeah.
right? You're not uncovering the things that make you feel joy and excitement, right? Like we tend to harp on the things we don't want, and it ends up creating more of that because that's where our focus is.
Absolutely.
But if I know it, and that's another thing, you know, well, I don't know what I want to do, Candace. You know, I work with so many people who come to me and start from scratch, or they've created something that's out of congruence, right? And so that's where they go, well, you were paying attention to those things and you knew at least something that you wanted. I don't know what I want. That's what you need to spend time with.
Absolutely.
Now that I know what I don't want, I can hone in on what I do. I know I don't want to feel this way anymore. Who makes me feel that way? Right? Does my business make me feel that way? Is it sustainable? Right? And, you know, my students have these type of, you know, identity crisis, I call them, right? Like moment to moment, because business is single-handedly one of the things that develops you the most, the fastest. Like you have to grow up if you're going to do business and you're going to serve other people.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you want to learn what to do and you want to get to spend time with yourself, go into business.
Yeah.
Business will tell you some things. That said, as you're going through that process in business and you're uncovering more of what you do want and what you don't, it starts to separate things. And that's when you start recognizing, I'm saying maybe, I'm going, oh, I'm hesitating, I'm procrastinating around this, right?
Yeah.
And it starts to, again, clarify things. And when you look at what a diamond goes through, you know, it comes out of the ground raw. That doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It means it needs to be processed, right?
Yeah.
We got to explore some things. We're not exploring ourselves enough. We're not paying attention to how we feel in certain environments and with certain people. I mean, even with parents, like, I can't tell you how many times I've had to distance myself from my mother and my father because they don't want to actively participate in life in such a way that it makes room for the things I think and feel and see too.
Wow.
Right? So we need that kind of permission, but we never get to that point if we're not paying attention to what's happening when we spend time with people and how they make us feel. Same thing with environments, right? Same thing with our children. You know, as I was saying, you know, in business, what I tell my students is with their clients, right? Do you really love who you're working with? Are you settling for things that you don't want? Are you building a community that is not in congruence with your personal values? Then it makes sense you're resisting doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
Or apologizing for pricing or not wanting to market and sell, right? Because it feels outside of you. So I always tell everyone the key is to have that diamond sharp clarity on your image and identity as a leader first. That is what helps you to carve something out of cream cheese for your clients. And that's what gets you out of the bed. And that's what helps you go, I want to do this more sustainably now. I want to be with my, like, for example, I'm in delivery with my students for about 90 minutes twice a week. That's it. The rest of my days is for me and my husband. Thank God that man has changed. Okay. I had a dream, and like Martin Luther King, it came to be. Okay.
Yes.
All of that changed because I decided that my priority was going to be my family above everything.
Yes.
That's what fostered the confidence and the courage to raise the pricing that would support that. And then to market in a way that it draws more of those types of people to me, people with character who are visionaries that love growth and contribution. And they're not apologizing for making money either. But again, none of this is clear if you don't allow yourself that moment to say, I've dated myself, I've spent time with myself, and this is what I want for my brand. This is what I want for my business. This is what I want for my marriage or for my partnership, right?
Yeah.
This is what I want for my children. That was another thing. My daughter, I truly feel, I was talking with my baby sister about this. She's expecting, and she's had all these questions about parenthood and what it's going to be like. And I'm like, baby, you're going to prepare a lot, and then that baby's going to prepare you a lot over time. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And what I shared with her is that your children have a way of further clarifying who you are and what you want for life too. If you open up space for that. And I knew I wanted to build a life that gave my daughter permission to do whatever she wanted to do. And I wanted to have the type of resources that would give her permission to go in any direction she wanted to as well. So that clarified more of my yes and my no. And that helped me spend more time with myself. And those are always the first steps, in my opinion, right? 17 years of doing this, it always starts with you.
Yeah.
And then everybody else comes to complement that or to contrast that. And those are the people you need to let go.
Yeah, definitely. What's the number one lesson you've learned from your life?
This is a good one. Number one lesson, it stays true to everything I've been sharing today. It's your image and your identity is the thing you're going to imprint into everything.
What do you
Okay.
mean?
More specifically, if it's unclear for you who you are and the way you want to move through the world, that is how you're going to affect everyone and everything. You're going to have people molding you and shaping you into what they want to do, even if it's in the smallest of ways.
Yeah.
But once that is crystal clear, I'm always talking about diamond sharp clarity. It's what allows you to powerfully move through the world and for people to feel your presence, even if you haven't said a word, right? That is the thing I feel traps a lot of us into comparison, even when it comes to pain, even when it comes to stories, right? We're not aware of how our image and identity and our experiences, sharpen our strengths and our skills in such a way that they complement the story, right? We're too busy contrasting and saying, well, somebody else does this better. And the truth is, no one's going to do it like you.
Yeah.
But until you know who you are and you're unapologetic about it, you're never going to experience that.
Yeah.
You're always going to be looking for something to qualify you, for someone to validate you, to go, oh, well, I'm better than this person. Nobody's going to do me like I can. Nobody's going to do you like you can. So now I don't even have to worry about who's running in their lane. I'm in a lane that no one can touch.
Definitely.
So number one lesson for sure, your image and your identity, first and foremost in everything. And that's the thing that develops confidence that converts. So you can just have a conversation with somebody and they're so enamored with the way you are and the way you do things, it creates opportunities for you.
Definitely. That's beautiful. Absolutely. We have an audience here. I want to just thank everyone real fast who's on here hanging out with us and supporting Candace and I while we hang out and chat. The information that you're giving is just so wonderful. I so appreciate you being here and taking some time out of your day. Since we do have a lot of people hanging out listening, I want to just kind of jump into what you do. I don't want to wait too much longer. So if you don't mind kind of just explaining, your business, who you help and how you kind of, help others.
Yeah, absolutely. And so confidence that converts is a lifestyle. if you will, that I teach all of my students to embrace. I work very specifically with visionaries, right? These are those of us who want to make a massive impact and know we need the resources to do that, right? So we don't apologize for the income we want to make. Now, when I say visionaries, by definition, it's those who are future focused, right? Those who want to create growth and they want to contribute and they want to be a disruptor, like a catalyst in any environment that they're in. The problem is that so many times we get caught in the messy middle of that. Like at the start, it's strong. At the finish, strong. The middle, it's so muddy, you get lost, right? And it's often because we're leaving our image out of things. And so the ways that I do this is by developing your communication skills, right? Not just your communication skills, but also your leadership and your influence, right? But the only way you can do that is, as I was just talking about, right? You got to understand your image, your identity as a leader. And that lends itself to building a brilliant brand, something that acts like a megaphone to call out your specific tribe, right? The community you want to build. And so the work that we do on all of these particular skills, it's done inside of an ecosystem. So the way I've set it up is it's not just coursework, right? Where you're coming in and you're taking all the information in, you go out in an attempt and a hope that it's being done right. It's education with hybrid coaching and training. Because in some different ways, we're missing different aspects of skills, right? As visionaries, we're very much go get it type of people.
Yeah.
Right? So we're doing the work a lot of times, but then wondering why it's getting lost in translation. Why is it somebody isn't seeing my value, right? And it's because we're operating in our strengths and we've got the skills, but we've left out the story.
Yes.
It's huge. It's huge. It's the huge part of the connection, right? It's why so many of these brands are out there now associating themselves with influencers who have the stories.
Yeah.
Right? Like businesses changed so much. Like 17 years ago, baby, it was nothing like this, right? Yeah. Everybody was just putting something out in hopes that something was going to come to them. But now you got to know how to communicate. Yeah. You got to know how to carry yourself on camera. And so many visionaries are groomed, cultivated in ways that deny who they are. And they actually, like their phone, they look at what I can do. And people are like, that is not enough to move me to work with you. Yeah. Now people are recognizing how much of their personal brand isn't being developed and how much it hinders three specific things: their marketing, their sales, and their delivery. So these are the zones we cover inside of Confidence That Converts. And we move you, whether you're just getting started and you come to us and you're like, Candace, or myself and my team, I have all of these ideas and they're huge and I'm intimidated and I don't know what to do. We help you to get started. Or if you've already started and you're recognizing there's a gap that's preventing you from growing and is keeping you from hitting your goals, that's what we come in to solidify, right? That's where that brilliant bond comes up, where somebody sees you shining, they see you showing up and sharing, and like that megaphone, they're hearing that specific call that you put out based on your story. And so one thing I want to emphasize is this much though: what we're not doing, which is really important to qualify, is we're not telling you your story has to be told from the painful parts and the dirt and all of these things. No, we're helping you to qualify what that is and identify what you're going to share. So it becomes the powerful part that propels you to the result and your clients to the result they want from you.
Beautiful.
Right. Once we learn how to do this, we start realizing like there's infinite possibilities. Right now, here's the other side. You can have all this information, right? You can have the education, you can have the coaching, you can have the community. But if you are not addressing all of the things that have gotten you to this point, if you don't know how to cope with the growth, if you don't know how to deal with the stress, you're not going to enact anything. You're not going to have the courage to face yourself in these new ways and to do things differently. Like many of my students, they're like, I need to hire a team and I'm paranoid. And I'm like, your image and identity is off as a leader. Let's talk about the conditioning you've grown up in that keeps you thinking you need to be everything to everyone.
Beautiful.
Let's talk about how you are denying the potential people who are a part of your vision, which is huge, and you know you can't manifest alone. Let's talk about how you're denying them an opportunity to use their power and their strengths to be effective for whomever it is that you're doing this work for, right? And the conversation goes in so many different ways. It's team building, right? It's pricing. A lot of us come into business apologizing for having a charge, right? Where does that come from? So while this is not a therapy session and I'm not a therapist, right? I have so many. Are you a therapist? No, baby, but I can recommend you to one because I don't enable my students, right? We're going to do the work. And if you can't do the work, I'm going to put you in connection with somebody who's going to help you work that out so you can come back and do the work.
Beautiful.
These are all the things that so many of us are missing. And so many of us are unhappy about when it comes to our brands and businesses.
Yeah.
And then we're spending all day beating ourselves up because we have these big dreams, this big vision, and we're feeling very incapable of accomplishing it. And it's like, why? What is it that you're missing? Do you even know?
Yeah.
That's the interesting part. When my students come into CTC, they're like, this is mind blowing. And how did you think of this? I thought of what I needed so badly when I first got started 17 years ago.
Wow.
I said, I'm not going to do it the way everyone else is. I'm going to do it in a way that honors all the parts of you. So you're building the business sustainably, right? So you come out of delivery and your whole life isn't your business, but you're building a business that is a complement to the lifestyle you want to live first.
Beautiful.
So because it's an ecosystem, there's a myriad of things we do. But first, got to get you that diamond sharp clarity, right? And all of these things at the end of the day affect the way you market, the way you sell, the way you deliver, even the way you create things. So we come in, we assess all of that. We break down how you're going to go forward based on your vision. And then every week we're in there implementing, putting things together, bringing incredible guests to share that help move that person forward. And typically within 4 weeks of being inside of the live experience, everything is shifting. They're coming in. I hit my goal. I'm crying. I can't believe I did that. And it's, it's literally being surrounded with everything that you need.
Wow.
So there's the complement of, if you're on a coaching track, there's information on that inside of CTC. Same thing if you want to build a course, digital product, if you want to create a service, all of these things are compensated for there. And it acts like a library that just so happens to have a team of librarians walking you through all these different aspects. And so again, CTC is something I never imagined doing.
Wow.
How about that, right? And it started when I was knee deep in the beauty industry. So many women I'd be talking to as I was making them up, or when I was working in television, they would be like, I want that kind of confidence. I want to be able to powerfully speak what's on my mind and share it. I have all these ideas. I'd be making them up and they'd be hysterical crying. And I'm standing there scratching my head like, why are people always crying in this chair?
Wow.
And eventually, over time, I started to notice the patterns. I'm like, maybe I need to explore this and see what's going to happen. And it has manifested into this, and even more that's coming, live events, retreats, production companies, so much more is on the horizon. But it had to be done on my terms, and it had to be done in a way that showed women they could honor who they were. And they didn't have to apologize for any of it. Even now men, doing the same thing with men. So yeah, that's how CTC came to be. And it's not just confidence that converts financially. The word convert has everything to do with change. Like I wanted to help people to self-actualize in such a way it would change their life and their business.
Beautiful.
So that's what we do at CTC.
Beautiful. One of the things that people seem to be always striving for is whatever success is to them.
Ooh.
They're listening right now and they're like, she's successful. That's successful. And everybody's different. Everybody looks at people differently. Everyone views it differently. What's your take on success? What does success mean to you?
Success to me means being in complete ownership of my time and freedom, right? Being able to steward my energy in such a way that it continues to replenish me on a daily basis. And money coming on the back end of living actualized like that, right? Like no apologies.
Yeah.
When I first started my business years ago, my very first business, I went in thinking that I had something to prove and I needed to be a certain way and I needed to work myself like a dog to achieve all of these things. And to see how far I've come, like, it's so incredibly powerful to be in a space where you don't have to apologize for who you are and what you want.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. And the most powerful part is watching my daughter.
Yeah.
My daughter is just, she didn't grow up in any of the chaos, and I get a glimpse of how beautiful life would have been through her.
Yeah.
My daughter at 14 started her own business, and that was even redeeming in itself, because for a long time I felt like a lot of the choices I made to do life with her father and losing my own health was going to compromise her quality of life. It only added to it.
Wow.
And now she is having conversations with me about her friends and what she wants in life. And that is success. That my own self-actualization is profoundly activating and actualizing others around me. That, and my hope for everyone listening is that they get a taste of that over and over and over again every day. There's so much gratitude and many moments where I still have to do work. I hope everyone catches that, right? I still have to do the work, right? You come to a new level of doing anything, those old wounds are going to come back up. You got to deal with them. And so I still have those moments, but this is what success is to me. And I'm learning, which is really interesting. The more successful I become, I'm learning to make space for it. Right? There's these moments where you almost feel like, oh my gosh, this is going really well. Like I'm not even used to this. There's grace for that too. Like a lot of visionaries are terrified of what it will mean to be successful because they know it will create clarity on who's who and what they want, and change is going to come on the back end of that. But being able to embrace that success and all the things I previously shared with you, for sure.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Before I close up, I want to ask, a lot of the individuals that are here watching are females who are going through some stuff. A lot of us are going through some stuff. What would be some advice that you'd give to specifically a female who's struggling with her identity or becoming her authentic self? What would you say to her?
Powerful question. And it's likely not going to be what many are going to expect me to say. It's the power of learning pace.
Oh.
As visionary women, women, I truly believe, are hardwired for growth, right? And nurturing and wanting to make things better. I believe that we do influence like no one else in the world can, right? These are just things that naturally come to us. Our desire to share and be with people and to take care of them in so many different ways. And it doesn't have to look conventional the way you do this. I want to point that out, right? But pacing ourselves, we are so quick to want to be there. We just want to be there. And I want to be
yes. Okay. Yes.
We want to be there right now.
Yeah.
And I promise you, if you learn to pace yourself through the process, there are so many beautiful lessons and
Mhm.
promises to yourself that you will fulfill, and things that you will propel yourself towards just by giving yourself grace to get through this moment, pacing yourself, and I say that because I came up in an environment that conditioned me to believe that the only way I was going to escape was to push myself to get there now. If you pace yourself, you will date yourself in the healthiest way possible. You will spend time with yourself in the healthiest way possible. And the best way I can liken it, if I were to give an analogy, is to think about the birthing process, right? When you get pregnant, right? All my mamas can understand this. When you get pregnant, there's so many seasons and changes and transitions and things you are going through. You're like, I just want to be there now. But the interesting part is, if you were there now, what damage would that do to your baby? This thing you're getting ready to bring into the world, right? You don't want to you
Yes.
get it. You get it.
That was so good.
You don't want to prematurely bring what you have next or what's coming into this life for you in any area. You don't want to prematurely bring, there's so many complications and so much pain and grief. And this is not to minimize those of my mamas who have had preemies. This is to celebrate you. Look at what you've been able to overcome. If you're doing that right now, or if you've already done it, it brings tears to your eyes because you remember how painful that process was,
Yeah.
right? And it even feel like you missed out on some things. But
Yeah.
look at how what you've gone through is going to powerfully affect so many listening right now.
Yeah.
They're recognizing the importance of pace,
Yeah.
going through the process. Please, I tell my students this, as an analogy as well, let that baby grow.
Yeah.
Get to
Absolutely.
know who's in the room with you, right? Your inner child, the conscious woman who's trying to figure things out but doesn't have all the answers. And then the powerful visionary that's being called out of you. You need all of them.
Yeah.
You need all of them. Denying any part of you is what makes it hard for you to be authentic. And I charge you to even think about wanting to run after being genuine, because the term authentic is also something that sometimes we find hard to associate with when it's being overused. Same vein though, right? In sync, your genuine self, that can't come up if you're not willing to spend time, even in dating, right?
Yeah.
No one wants to be in the club with the guy who can't take no for an answer. Like he's constantly chasing you and he's pushing you and pushing you. And you're like, please, this is such a repelling experience, right? You just don't even begin to understand. But it's because he keeps pushing for something that is just not right. But how much more do we enjoy the process when it's unfolding and we
Yeah.
see that person wants to spend time with us? And
Yeah.
they're taking their time and they're not rushing you. Even with cooking, baby, I'm a foodie. I don't know if you are, Sabrina,
Yeah, I
but
am.
I love me some food. Okay,
Yes.
listen, we have to do dinner one time and just like go over all the things of story and food and kids and life, right?
Yeah.
But the
My
best
fiance will
food,
ask me sometimes, why are you chasing wealth so much? What's going on with you and the wealth? And I'm like, food. I
eat.
want to eat good food.
That is
That's
it.
it.
That's
That's
success
it.
to us. It's that simple. Okay, right? When you think about that, right? Us foodies, we want to savor things.
Yeah.
We want to enjoy it. When you think of how we want to pace ourselves through that, and when we cook food low and slow, it's always the best.
Yeah. You're right.
So if you're struggling, baby, know that in so many ways, marriage, family, health, business, loving myself, I've been there. And giving yourself permission to find your pace every day,
Yeah.
that is where you learn to be the most authentic, because then you also start recognizing who's pushing you and who's not making room for you.
Yeah.
You start realizing what is a hell yes and what is a hell no. And then you can start disqualifying things. And that's what helps. It's like full body wine, right? That crock pot chicken that's just stewed for 6 hours is falling off the bone. It's amazing because it had time.
Yeah.
Give yourself the gift of time.
I love that. I love that. What a way to close up. That's perfect. And it's something we all struggle with.
Listen.
Yeah, we all struggle. Not in all areas. Not in all areas. Right? We're not pointing fingers.
Yes.
But in some areas of our life, we're getting anxious.
That part.
Yeah.
That part.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. This is absolutely phenomenal.
So
I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you spending time with us, telling a little bit of your story and giving us some insight. Do you have any closing thoughts before I close up here?
Absolutely. You want to build confidence that converts, like the kind that changes your life, your business, your relationships, all the things in this world you want to have influence on. It starts with having diamond sharp clarity on your image and identity, looking for things that are in congruence with what you value. And then, as Sabrina always talks about, right, courageously taking action. Yeah. That's what creates confidence. And it's not a feeling, it's a belief, right? And beliefs are built with action and testing and pacing ourselves. And in some instances, pushing ourselves, right? Yeah. That's what I want to leave everyone in. As long as you're doing that, you're going to foster that brilliant bond between all the aspects of who you are, and it's going to powerfully move people around you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Yes. For those of you that are watching live, we so appreciate you being here and spending time with us. For those of you that feel pulled to check out Candace and everything she has to offer, her website is right above her face area. She has all of the things that she offers, plus all of her social media, if you would like to follow her. If you're watching and you got this far on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you are so that we know where you are watching us and we can send you a little heart of love. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us here on Her Version. This community is expanding every single day and is filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, share, and like. If you have a story to share, please make sure you reach out to me. I would be more than happy to share your story on this podcast. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others. Do something awesome today. Much love.